You know something I've realized about Kenyan politics? Handshakes do not just happen. They are not emotional decisions. They are not about forgiveness. And most definitely, they are not about putting the country first. At least, not in the way that they usually present it to us. Every single time you see two political rivals smiling and shaking hands in front of the camera, what you are actually witnessing is the final scene of a negotiation that has been taking place quietly for weeks, sometimes even months. And most of the real decisions about that handshake have been made long before the handshake ever reaches the public. Let us go back to the 2018 handshake between the late Raila Amolo Odinga and the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Before the handshake moment, the country was very tense. There were protests happening in the streets. There were questions about legitimacy. We remember the late Raila Odinga swore himself in. There were international concerns. Markets were uneasy and fluctuating. Political temperatures were very high. Then all of a sudden, there were smiles at Harambe House. There were talks of unity. There was the famous building bridges narrative. Do you think that happened because they just one day woke up and decided to forgive each other? No, most definitely not. It happened because the cost of continued confrontation had become too high. And this is the first rule of a political handshake. They begin when the pressure rises. But pressure can arise from very many places. Pressure can be economic, when investors get nervous, when the currency weakens, when businesses start complaining. It can also be international, when foreign governments start sending signals of discomfort, like the way it is happening in Tanzania at the moment. Also, it can be electoral. When you start thinking about the next cycle and realize you may need some of your former enemies. Remember, politics is survival, and survival always beats pride. Now let's talk about what is actually negotiated. Most citizens think it's just about positions, cabinet slots, parliamentary leadership, committee appointments. Yes, that is part of the deal. But sometimes that is not all of the deal. But the deeper negotiations go, they are more strategic. Negotiations involve political safety, future alignment agreements, budgetary influence, regional balancing, narrative control, access to state machinery, sometimes even about protecting their own business interests and networks and long term interests. And here is something people do not want to admit. Sometimes, handshake is not about stabilizing today. It's about the next election cycle. It's about 2027. It's about positioning yourself for 2032. That is how serious political actors think, in cycles, not in headlines. Have you noticed that before major political reconciliations and handshakes, the rhetoric becomes extremely hostile, the attacks become sharper, and the insults become too personal? The statements also become very loud, and the protests become more. Why? Because negotiation is about leverage. If I look weak, I lose bargaining power. If I appear desperate, I enter the meeting from below. So, before the deal is sealed, both sides must perform strength for their supporters. It is theater, but it is strategic theater. You show your best that you do not surrender. You show your rivals that you are still a formidable competitor. Then once the deal is secured, the tone changes overnight. Smiles, press conferences, languages about unity. But understand this. The handshake is not the beginning. It is the announcement of something that has already been agreed long before we saw it. Now let's bring this into the present political climate. Whenever there are rumors about realignments, whether involving the President William Samoei Ruto or internal tensions around figures like Rigathi Gachagua, many people react emotionally. They say, impossible. They say, these two hate each other. They say, that can never happen. But politics is not about emotions. It is about interests. Ask yourself these questions. Who is currently under pressure? Who needs breathing room? Who benefits from lowering political temperature? Who is thinking about long-term political survival? Because in Kenyan politics, alliances are rarely permanent. They are very conditional, actually. And they last only as long as their interests align. Let's also be honest about something else. Handshake divides supporters. There are always those who feel betrayed. There are always those who feel like their sacrifices were wasted. But political elites operate differently. Supporters, yes, are driven by loyalty, but elites are driven by calculation. That gap, the difference in motivation, is where most political disappointment comes from. And that is why studying power dynamics is very important. If you understand the incentives, you will be rarely shocked by these political events. Sometimes you might disagree with them, but you won't be surprised. Kenyan politics is not about enemies becoming friends. It is about rivals recognizing mutual benefit. Temporarily. And when that benefit disappears, so does the handshake. So the next time you see political rivals standing side by side, smiling for the cameras, shaking their hands, don't just listen to their speeches. Look beyond the symbol. Ask yourself, what pressure led to this specific moment? Whose or what interests are being protected? And who stands to gain the most? Because in politics, power is negotiated. And quietly, very quietly, but then displayed very publicly. And don't forget, power is never accidental. We have come to the end of the video today. Kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate your honest feedback. My name is Doreen Cherotich. I'm a political analyst and a governance expert. See you on the next video. Bye.